I'm here at the Atari booth with David Lowey, and we are talking about Atari. Atari seems to be back in I would say a major way, actually. Doing a lot of cool double A's, kind of almost indie experiences with older IP and newer games.
Yep.
How did Atari kind of rethink the way they do games?
So, we have a new CEO by the name of Wade Rosen who joined the company just over 3 years ago as chairman, and then kind of had the opportunity to step into the role of CEO. And what he'll say, and we all say, is when he joined the company, Atari was still a very well-known brand. It's kind of like a pop culture brand. It wasn't really known for gaming anymore, and so we're out of balance.
Right.
And if we want the brand to live, like it's been around for 50 years. We want it to live for another 50 years, another 100 years, right? So if it's going to be a relevant brand that people still think of fondly in 50 years, we have to bring it back in balance. It has to be known for gaming again. And we approach that in different ways. Sometimes we're just re-releasing old games, pulling together collections like Atari 50. Sometimes we're remastering games. And sometimes we're creating new games where we completely reimagine an IP, like we're doing with Lunar Lander Beyond, and we will do with other titles in the future, where we work with really good indie studios and tell them, just bring us a great idea. Where can you take this IP? And it's really fun when they do something that surprises us.
Right.
If they do something innovative, they kind of have the core game idea, but then they take either the story or the gameplay in a place that's unexpected. So it keeps the IP alive, but it sort of modernizes it and extends it and reintroduces it to the original audience in a way that they don't expect, but also to a brand new audience, who didn't grow up with it.
Yeah. We were talking earlier, just randomly over there, and I told you that my first console was an Atari 5200 that my dad brought home, and I recognize a lot of these IP that are kind of making some sort of resurgence almost 40 years later, in my brain, probably 40-ish. How do you kind of pick and choose which IP are coming? Because obviously the Atari 50 collection is an amazing product. I think that's kind of the one thing people circled and said Atari's kind of back in a legitimate, real way in video games, and not just a icon on a t-shirt somewhere.
Yeah, the team at Digital Eclipse did an amazing job on Atari 50. One of the reasons it's so good is because, that team, if you were to ask me who are the 10 foremost experts on Atari software and hardware and the brand in the world, 4 of them probably work at Digital Eclipse, right? So it was a really easy collaboration for us. So much so that actually the Digital Eclipse joined the Atari family within the last year. That collection is interesting because it's a combination of like greatest hits, but also deep cuts. And Digital Eclipse is really, really good at emulation. They've got their Big Cell engine. So some of these platforms like Lynx and Jaguar, not easy to emulate.
Right.
So some of the games in that collection are really cool, formative games that did something interesting, but just haven't been accessible in a long time.
Right.
So making these games that we felt were important and accessible across PC and console, and putting them in the context of the story of the company and the developers, it was just sort of it was a cool opportunity. But yeah, the decision on what games went in there was a combination of like, what's important, what holes haven't been filled, because there have been collections in the past.
Yeah.
Atari Flashback Classics and things like that. But like filling in some missing pieces that we felt were important. The other issue, of course, is that not every game that we all associate with Atari hardware was made by Atari. Right. So people are like, "Where's Pitfall?" Well, Pitfall's owned by Activision, and so some of it was also getting permission to use games that hadn't been used in a while, or frankly, over the last couple of years, reacquiring a lot of those games so that we can do what we want with them.
Right.
There were some games that actually were owned by Atari that we sort of pulled back, and that gives a lot more options to bring games back as well.
Yeah. The game I associate with Atari, which isn't owned by Atari, is Kaboom.
Kaboom is a great game.
It's my favorite Atari game. It's kind of the game that I circle. It says it's the first video game I ever played.
Yeah.
Is Kaboom, and so that would be an IP I would want Atari to maybe address to see what a new Kaboom would look like. Now, I don't know, if that would even be worth it, or if Activision or Microsoft, I guess now, would be willing to.
We're always open to conversations, and I think one of the things that we're hoping that you'll see in the marketplace as more that hardware like the 2600 Plus comes out, which plays 7,800 games, and other players are bringing out retro hardware too, is that it will entice people who own games that haven't been published in a long time to bring them back, either in the original format or a collection. So time will tell, but I think a healthy retro market in general means that more games are going to come out, because it's going to be worth the time that some of these large publishers who have moved their focus away to come back and say, okay, well, we should do something with that, or we should let somebody else do something with it at least. So time will tell, but that's our hope.
Yeah. So 2 more things before I let you go. The first one, where do you kind of see Atari is kind of taking I would say a smart approach to the development of the IP, right? I mean, sometimes you see these companies bring back older games and they try to go super big budget, and then they end up not selling the way they want to, and then the company kind of, dissolves or becomes a smaller shell of itself. What was the kind of approach to that, and where do you guys see Atari in 10 years, 15 years?
As I said, our timeline for the team that's in place right now is 50 years, even though we know none of us are going to be around working at Atari in 50 years, but that's the way we're kind of looking at it. But if you look at the next 5-10 years, I see a company that's going to continue to focus in an area of classic. And the definition of retro changes every year, right? PS2 retro now.
Yeah, I know. Don't remind me.
Exactly. But we'll continue to, part of it's like building for the long term. So not being short term in your thinking. Sometimes, every industry has its ups and downs, and people will chase the next shiny technology or theme. We're just going to kind of carve out our own path and keep it slow and steady, so that we're making smart decisions, testing the water, and doing what we love most, which is working with classic IP in these different ways. As I said, collections, re-releases, reimagining, remaster. That's our sweet spot. That's what led us to bring Night Dive and Digital Eclipse into the fold, sort of like a common vision and sort of focus area and joy around classic gaming. And we'll see where it goes. Like, console generations will come and go. Streaming has impacted the industry. All sorts of things are going to happen, but we're going to kind of keep that focus on what we think we can do best. So I think hopefully, the next 5-10 years, you will be used to Atari publishing new games, and we'll be publishing an occasional collection of things that hopefully catch people by surprise, or like, we didn't know that Atari owned that cool handheld IP.
Right.
There's going to be some fun stuff coming out, and also working with really good partners, like working with studios that we think approach and think the same way, and can do justice to some of these cool IPs.
Yeah. I think the way you guys are headed, I believe this, but do you think Atari could be like another kind of major force in gaming again, and not in terms of like console manufacturing or being a massive quadruple A studio, but smaller games are taking over, and I think Atari seems like they are leading in terms of quality, in terms of that kind of mid-tier.
Yeah, anything we're doing is doing well. This is a really important rule for being in the game for a long period of time. Like, when you find yourself cutting corners to chase something, it's like a good warning sign from a business standpoint. But yeah, where do we see? Yes, our goal is that Atari will be a brand that you know of in gaming. It will mean something to you. Does it mean it's going to be a 50 billion market cap company that's competing with some of the larger players? Maybe not. It's hard to predict, but it's more about share a mind rather than share a market, in terms of Atari is known for something, known for quality. I know what they do, and I'm curious and or eager to see what's coming next. Like, if we can keep that vibe that we seem to have now sustained, that's going to make us all pretty happy.
Now, I can't let you escape without asking you about my favorite Atari IP, and that is Rollercoaster Tycoon.
Oh, yeah, Rollercoaster Tycoon is an amazing IP.
Now,
Amazing games.
25 years,
Yeah.
which is hard to believe, but Rollercoaster Tycoon was the game that got me into PC gaming and like sim games, and I still have Rollercoaster Tycoon Classic on my computer at home. I have it on my phone. It's everywhere, anywhere I can get it. I even bought Rollercoaster Tycoon Adventures on the Switch, which I like, but I would really love Rollercoaster Tycoon Classic. But we can talk about that another day, another time. Why do you think Rollercoaster Tycoon has kind of thrived for 25 years?
Part of it's the OG nature of it, but part of it is also where it came from. If you think about the development of that game, Chris Sawyer started making Rollercoaster Tycoon not because he wanted to make a game, but he wanted to figure out how to make roller coasters. He had done his first game, Transport Tycoon, which was a real deep dive into Sims, and then he took some time off, and he thought he was going to go back to Transport Tycoon, but he was going to adventure parks. He had time off, and he like fell in love with roller coasters. He started tinkering with it, and it was a personal passion, and it just grew into a game. And when he released it, he didn't think it was going to be a big game, and in the beginning, it really wasn't. And then over the first year it was out, all of a sudden it turned into this blockbuster, caught everybody by surprise, including Chris.
Yeah.
But there's something about that sort of personal passion that makes a game stand out, because it was, you're sort of caught up in his intellectual curiosity.
Right.
I think the other thing too is like the early games were very deep simulation, the line management, the cues, everything. Like there was a lot of depth there that attracted a certain type of player. But then you had the players who were very competitive and wanted to beat the scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the sandbox players who just want to make something cool, and they're not really into the management. So
that's this guy right here.
Yeah, and we all approach it differently. And sometimes your tycoon type is like changes over time. Like sometimes I just want to make something pretty, and sometimes I want to see how much I can charge for an umbrella, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what has happened with the franchise is that the early games were all very, very hardcore sim based. The games that have come out in the last 10 years or so have been on the much more casual side of the franchise. So people who love building parks but aren't as interested in the hardcore sim, and so we've made both sides of the world kind of happy. I think our next step, what happens in the future, is we'll probably return into that mid-core to hardcore sim, because that hasn't been touched in a while. But there are also things like making classic and some of the other games that are canon available on more platforms. So all of those things are under discussion right now, and there are going to be some announcements over the next year that I think we're going to make people pretty excited. We're just not there to explain them yet, but yeah, we're really excited about Rollercoaster Tycoon. We're very excited about celebrating the 25th anniversary, which is really celebrating A, Chris and what he did, which is amazing, but B, the community, right?
Yeah.
It's the, why is Rollercoaster Tycoon the thing that it is? It's because everybody likes playing it and talking about it, sharing videos of their parks and silly memes and making roller coasters where people fly into the air and land and explode. Like, it's just so much fun. So it's really celebrating with Chris and the community. And then hopefully, the goal is, investing a lot of Atari's energy and working with some cool partners to like begin the next chapter, and do some new development and supporting, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah. I've been chasing that Rollercoaster Tycoon high for a while, and I've tried other things like, Park Beyond came out, and Planet Coaster and Parkitect, but there's nothing like Rollercoaster Tycoon out there. There just isn't.
There's something about the DNA, the isometric, the 3D isometric, or the view of it, the pixelization, and then also the nature of what you can do in it, that just captures people's imagination. And staying true to the franchise is going to be really important. There are a lot of other sim games that have come out that do interesting things. It's a great genre, but yeah, I do feel like Rollercoaster Tycoon is somewhat special.
Yeah.
Like we all have like a soft spot in our heart for it, and want to do well by it.
Yeah.
Want to do well by it. And I run into people all the time who are I was working with a game writer actually a couple years ago, and I've heard this from other people. And she's like, "Oh my God, I play that game a month out of every year. I have to time gate it to a month because otherwise I'd lose my job because I do nothing else but play Rollercoaster Tycoon."
Yeah.
But people come back to it and return to it like a younger generation will return to Minecraft until they're in their 80s. Like my kids still set up a Minecraft server 1 month out of every year, and they'll do it for the rest of their lives. RCT fans are the same way. They're just compulsively brought back to the game because it's just joyous.
Yeah.
You know?
It really is. Really is. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. This was awesome.
No, it's great talking
Thank you,
to you.
David.
Always fun. And
Yes.
yeah, come back and talk to us again.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And we'll keep you in the loop because we got more announcements coming this year.
The loop. Roller coaster. Huh. Thanks everybody for watching. You can subscribe on YouTube, Boss Rush Network. Head to bossrush.net for some awesome articles about this interview as well. David, thanks again.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. I'm glad you guys came by.